Today, we're diving into Bell Hook's incredible collection of essays, Outlaw Culture. Now, this is so much more than just a book. Think of it as a manual for seeing the hidden messages in, well, everything, from music videos to art galleries. So get ready, because your perspective on pop culture might just be about to completely change. You know how you might think the latest blockbuster or hit song is just entertainment? Well, Bell Hooks would disagree. She shows us how everything we consume is actually loaded with these political undercurrents that are subtly shaping our views on power, race, and gender. So when Hooks talks about being an outlaw, she's not talking about being a criminal. Nope. For her, an outlaw is a cultural rebel, someone who dares to defy the status quo. It's all about dismantling these invisible cages of representation. But okay, how do we actually do that? How do we become these cultural outlaws in our own lives? Okay, so here's our roadmap. First, we're going to meet the revolutionary thinker herself. Then, we'll get our hands on her toolkit for cultural critique. After that, we'll put it to the test with some really famous examples. And finally, we'll uncover her ultimate vision for what freedom can look like. So let's start with the architect of this whole idea, Bell Hooks. She wasn't your typical academic hiding away in an ivory tower. Her work is amazing because it weaves together these really complex theories with the raw, real experiences of everyday life. She's kind of like a guide, inviting us to see the world through a brand new, much more critical lens. I love this quote. It's so much more than just a favorite color, you know? It's a metaphor for her entire philosophy. She saw her work as a red door, a wide-open invitation for absolutely everyone to step into this space of radical new ideas and to start challenging the world around them. And here we get to the absolute core of her argument. We are constantly being fed this diet of cultural messages that, whether we realize it or not, reinforce oppressive systems. The images flickering on our screens, the songs we hear on the radio, they aren't just pixels and sounds. They actually have the power to shape our reality. So if our culture is the battleground, then what are our weapons? See, Hooks doesn't just diagnose the problem and leave it at that. She actually equips us with a really powerful toolkit for resistance. Let's open it up and see what's inside. She calls this amazing tool cultural criticism. And the best part is, this isn't just for academics. It's designed for all of us. It's a practical way to merge deep thinking with our daily lives so we can actively, consciously challenge the status quo. And here's her 4-step method. First, you have to unite theory and practice. Bridge that gap between just thinking about things and actually doing something. Second, you gotta cross those boundaries between different fields of study. Third, and this is a big one, turn your critical eye to the pop culture that surrounds you every single day. And fourth, probably the most transformative step of all, decolonize your own mind. But what's the whole point? What's the end game of all this critical thinking? Well, it's about confronting what Hooks, citing Stuart Hall, calls the anti-humane forces in our society. All those things that kind of chip away at our humanity. And it's about actively working to build a more just and compassionate world for everyone. All right, theory is great, but let's put this revolutionary toolkit into practice. Our first case study, the queen of pop herself, Madonna. Now, for Hooks, Madonna was this fascinating, complicated paradox, a symbol of feminist potential, and in the end, a profound betrayal. In Madonna's early days, Hooks saw this glimmer of hope, right? Here was this fearless woman who was just shattering sexist norms. But that hope, it kind of soured. Hooks argued that Madonna's image was eventually co-opted by the very patriarchal system she once seemed to be fighting, trading genuine rebellion for a conformist, pornographic gaze. Her book, Sex, was really the nail in the coffin for Hooks. She saw it as a total retreat from real rebellion into this kind of empty pleasure-seeking. She argued that it carelessly appropriated marginalized cultures and ultimately reinforced a very narrow, white-centric ideal of beauty. And then there was this infamous quote from Madonna herself, which seemed to confirm all of Hooks' suspicions. It suggested that Madonna's goal wasn't to dismantle power, but to just wield a traditionally masculine form of it for herself. But Hooks' response to this is just a masterclass in feminist theory. She completely dismantles this idea that liberation is just about women adopting the tools of their oppressors. For her, true feminism was never about becoming dicks in drag. It's about tearing down the entire patriarchal stage. Now, just like she did with Madonna, Hooks turned her sharp, critical eye to the art world. This time, she offered a radical reinterpretation of the iconic artist Jean-Michel Basquiat. And she argued that the mainstream story about him had completely missed the point of his work. So, think about it. How do we usually talk about Basquiat? The art world loves to connect him to this lineage of white male artists, right? Like Warhol and Pollock. But what if that comparison is actually erasing the true meaning of his art? This quote from one critic perfectly illustrates that Eurocentric lens Basquiat was so often viewed through. By framing his work this way, critics basically erased his deep connection to his own heritage and his own experiences. They could only see him as a reflection of something else. Hooks saw this way of looking at his art as a huge barrier to truly understanding him. So she challenged us to break down that barrier, to look at his art through a new, decolonized lens, and to uncover the hidden depths that were there all along. And what does she uncover? Not some derivative artist, but a powerful witness to history. In his canvases, she sees the brutal legacy of colonization, the shattered pieces of the Black experience, and this profound personal pain that the art world had just conveniently ignored. Now, these case studies, they aren't just academic exercises. They lead us directly to the heart of Hooks' entire philosophy, a powerful vision she calls the practice of freedom. And for her, this is the ultimate goal of any true cultural revolution. And maybe her most powerful insight is this: you can't just dismantle one part of the machine of oppression and leave the others running. All of these systems, white supremacy, capitalism, patriarchy, they're all interconnected. To fight for true freedom, you have to fight on all fronts at the same time. This is Hooks' challenge to every single one of us. A real cultural revolution isn't just about changing the world out there. It's about having the fierce willingness, the courage, to confront the ways we ourselves participate in and maybe even benefit from these systems of domination. That's where the real work begins. So Bell Hooks has given us the key. The question now is, will we have the courage to open our own red doors? How will you use her tools of cultural criticism to not just see the world differently, but to actively help build a better one?